It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? Bitch boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest out brew the magic world. We are running through Bloombro, keeping it going, keeping it moving, more decks, drowning the world in content, and I'm having a fun time doing it. And today we are taking another block off the chain of the tribal commanders from Bloomborough. And today we're talking about Selesnya Rabbits with Finneas Ace Archer. 2-mana 2/2 Rabbit Arch with Vigilance and Reach that says whenever Finneas attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control that's a token or a rabbit. And then if creatures you control have total power 10 or greater, we draw a card. After seeing Burke, which was the card that got released as one half of the starter decks that cared about +1/+1 counters, I was intrigued to see what the rabbits would actually get in the main set. And I think as far as a lot of tribes go in this set, Finneas feels like actually a really good option as a commander for this tribe. First, because like any other good Selesnya tribe, we're trying to go wide, and putting a counter on every other creature you control that's a token or a rabbit is a lot of counters the wider that you go. If you have 10 or 12 creatures, you're talking about 10 or 12 counters for just Finneas attacking. Sure, the counter doesn't go on Finneas, but I think it still leads to a great pattern where Finneas can just grow your other creatures and they're going to get out of hand. And they're going to get overwhelming for your opponents. We're going to talk about our rabbits that we have access to. In fact, this deck makes even commons from the set functional. And I love to see that when it comes to a tribal deck. We're talking about other ways we can make tokens. Since Finneas doesn't care whether those tokens are rabbits, we can make other tokens, and believe me, Selesnya has no short of support for that. We're going to talk about how we're going to pay off those counters. Remember, those counters get put on attack, meaning we have a lot of ways to take advantage of that. And then we're in green, we're in white, we're in a go-wide deck. We're going to get stuck in, we're going to deal damage, we're going to try to win the game via combat. And we're going to talk about how we're going to try to take our wide board state and leverage it towards winning the game. Well, let's talk about rabbits. What I think is really interesting about this set is a lot of our rabbits, even at common in the set, aren't terrible in this deck when you start to see what they're actually going to do. Beauregard Mentor is going to get potentially scary with having Trample. It's a star where stars are the number of creatures you control. With a couple counters, Mentor is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to become a real threat. Head of the Homestead is probably a card that some people would completely throw into the bulk, but in a deck like this, you're getting 3 bodies for 5 mana, and all of them can get a counter when Finneas attacks. Head of the Homestead's one of those cards that I think feels like a real all-star in a deck like this, and it seems really odd because someone's going to go, it's a common, it's just 3 2 and 2 1/1s. But the turn you play it, they immediately turn into a 4/3 and 2 2/2s, and that's if you have nothing else on board to help them out. Intrepid Rabbit, one of our first offspringers, can come in and get an offspring copy of it, which both of them will get tokens. And when it enters, gives a creature +1/+1 on the turn. Again, 4 mana for a 3/2 body and a 1/1 body that are both going to grow. Well worth the cost, and those each can grow over time with Finneas. Irregular Cohort's kind of an interesting one. It's a changeling, right? So it is a rabbit. And it comes in and makes another 2/2 shapeshifter token with changelings. So we get 2 rabbits for 4 mana. Again, just allowing us to go wide and have more rabbits for the purposes of more tribal synergies. My favorite new card from all of Bloomborough, because it's going in a very specific deck and it feels great here, is Jacked Rabbit. When it attacks, we create a number of 1/1 rabbit creature tokens equal to its power. You can have it come in with extra counters on it because of the Ravenous, but even if you don't, every turn we can stack the triggers so that Finneas goes off perts, putting counters and everything, and then Jackrabbit goes off making more rabbits if you want to do that. Or if you want to do it the opposite way around, all the rabbits you create off of Jackrabbit would get the +1/+1 counter. So you can kind of choose what you need to do there depending on what abilities you may have access to. But Jackrabbit's going to get bigger and bigger, make more 1/1 rabbits, and go wide. Regal Bunnycorn is kind of in the same vein as Beauregard Mentor, just doesn't have Trample. But being a star where stars the number of non-land permanents you control, so it actually could get a little bit bigger, counting our artifacts and enchantments and other support pieces. So it may not have Trample, but it can get slightly bigger. Valley Quest Caller says whenever one or more rabbits, bats, birds, or mice enter, we scry 1. This is going to get us a couple good scries over the course of the game, but we can get it down. But it's just going to give all of the rabbits +1/+1, so great. Another buff on them, so when we're adding counters and doing our other things, they're going to get that buff. War and War Leader feels great here. Whenever you attack, you get to choose one, make a rabbit token that's tapped and attacking, or give all your creatures a +1/+1 buff. For 6 mana, we get 2 of these. One that's a 4/4, one that's a 1/1. They're both going to grow with Finneas, and they both could potentially do different choices, do the same choice. I mean, it's going to lead to a lot of combats where all we need is a trample enabler, which we'll talk about, or other things like that, to just really put forward big damage to our opponents. Hop to It feels great for 3 mana, just giving you 3 1/1 rabbits. On the same turn that Finneas attacks, you now get 3 2/2s instead of 3 1/1s. And that just feels completely great for 3 mana, especially since we're in the perfect colors to double those. Triple those if you want to, with certain effects. Make them even better. You know, there's a lot of things we can do. So an on-rate spell that makes tokens and rabbits at that for the purposes of other tribal synergies feels really good. Tempt with Bunnies, the new Tempt card from the commander deck, makes sense here. Draw a card and make a rabbit. Each opponent can do it. If you do, we do it. Has potential to get up to 4 cards and 4 rabbits, which, again, we can use, hopefully, to our advantage. And then a Carrot Cake, another common from the set that probably would be a throwaway to most people. Comes in, makes a rabbit and scries 1, and when you sack it to gain the 3 life, makes a rabbit and scries 1. So you have 2 tokens and 3 life for 4 mana. Seems pretty useful to me with 2 scry 1s. I mean, there's probably some arguments that it's common and it's maybe not very good, but I think when you're trying to make those individual tokens, especially when we start talking about how we're going to try to spin this towards taking advantage of rabbits and the more tribal stuff, I think it makes sense to play something like Carrot Cake and take advantage of it. Well, as far as the token side of it go, we can play things like Nesting Dovehawk that, at the beginning of our combat, we populate, make a token that's a copy of a creature token. And then when a token comes in, we grow Nesting Dovehawk. It's in the air, so it's going to get to be a threat. Queen Eleanal will make us an extra 1/1 soldier anytime we make creature tokens. And its power and toughness is equal to the number of creatures we control. Now, remember, right, these guys won't get that counter from Finneas when it attacks, but I think they're still going to be great support pieces. Sandstorm Salvager is an interesting one that can be a way to give a buff to our whole board. When it comes in, you make a 3/3 golem creature token, and we can pay 2 to tap it, put a counter on each creature token we control, and they get trampled until end of turn. So there is a world where we pay 2 into the Salvager to tap it, put a counter on all of them, go to combat, Finneas attacks. Now they've gotten 2 counter this turn and trample, and now they become a threat, right, to our opponents in combat. We have things like Pest Infestation and March of the Multitudes that both make tokens, but in different ways. Pest Infestation adds the rider of having some removal for either artifacts or enchantments, and no matter whether we choose to destroy up to X of those or not, we're going to get twice X pests, and those will all get counters because of Finneas. March of the Multitudes adds the fun of being at instant speed, and we can actually use Convoke. We can tap creatures to help pay for its cost and make a bunch of 1/1 soldiers with lifelink. That's really great because that lifelink is going to be paying us life back as we're attacking with them and making sure that we keep ourselves hopefully alive when it doesn't come to things like commander damage. We have Second Harvest here getting the reprint in the commander decks, and I'm happy it does because it did bring the price down just a little bit. For each token we control, make a copy of it. The wider your board of tokens, of course, goes, the better Second Harvest becomes. Oketra's Monument feels great in a deck like this. Most, if not all, of our rabbits are either in specifically mono white or in Selesnya colors, so this is going to help reduce the cost of almost every rabbit we have. And then whenever we cast a creature spell, we make a 1/1 warrior with vigilance, so again, more tokens for Finneas to buff. We're playing 1 doubler in Parallel Lives. There is options to play more doublers, but I was trying to keep the budget for this deck somewhere relevant. If you have a $60 or $70 extra dollars, throw Bondrak in, throw O'Hare Talk in. If you want to go a little bit higher, throw Anointed Procession in. I mean, all of them will do well for you. But again, my goal of these brews is to try to make a deck at a decent budget that fits all of the angles we want the deck to do. And so I kind of had to spread the budget. And I mean, I still spent, $30, $35 on 1 doubler. I'm sure that everybody will have their preference on it, but a card that I really love and probably will take off very well for this deck is Rabble Rousing. It says whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures, you make that many 1/1 citizens. Then if you control 10 or more creatures, you can play the cards you hit away for free. What I like a lot about Rabble Rousing is it tends to create a play line where you can freely swing with whatever token you have on the board because you're going to get a token to replace it that can block, and you're not worried about that token dying in combat. What's nice with Finneas is that we can stack our triggers, So that Rabble Rousing goes off first, making us all the citizens, and then the citizens get counters from Finneas. So you can kind of see that the way you stack your triggers can give us real advantage when it comes to abilities like that. But as far as paying off the counters, we do have Burke, like we talked about, a 6-mana rapid soldier that says when it enters, we can put a counter on each up to 2 creatures. And it says whenever creature you control with a counter on it attacks, you double the number of counters on it. Burke is going to work really well with Finneas to make sure that if a creature doesn't have a counter, the first turn it's going to get the counter, and the second turn it's going to get doubled. We're pairing this with a pair of humans that aren't rabbits, but they're going to help our board out a ton. Absent Falconer and Tuskguard Captain. Falconer giving all creatures with a counter on them flying, and Tuskguard giving all creatures with a counter on them trample. These are 2 abilities that are going to do nothing but help us in the future, especially that left one having flying is going to allow all of our tokens to get in the air and be a lot harder for our opponents to deal with. Felidar Retreat kind of plays a twofer in our deck. When the land comes in, we can either make a Cat Beast token if we want to, or put a counter on all our creatures and give them Vigilance, leading to a nice big attack where we can get in and still be back to block. We're playing the new Innkeeper's talent because it does nothing but help us out. At the beginning of combat on our turn, we can put a counter on a creature we control. Then if we get it to level 2, all counters with our permanents on with counters on them have Ward 1, and when we get to level 3, we get that top half of a card like Doubling Season, where we can just double the amount of counters we're putting on things. And then we're spending a little bit of a pretty penny on Virtual Loyalty, mainly because of its enchantment side. At the beginning of your end step, you put a counter on each creature you control and untap them, effectively giving your whole board vigilance and a counter. Seems really good, especially for 5 mana, and especially when early game you can spend 2 mana to get a knight on its adventure. But okay, we talked about our rabbits, we talked about our ways to make tokens, we talked about our counter synergies. How the heck are we going to get into combat? You're in Selesnya, there's a lot of ways to do it, and there's a lot of really interesting ways to continue gaming it. I think Absent Falconer and Tuskguard Captain kind of go into this category as well. But we have things like Champion of Lambhold. Its power, creatures with power less than it cannot block creatures we control. Whenever another creature comes in, we put a counter on it. Champion of Lambhold's one of those cards where it doesn't take long to grow to the point that your opponent just can't block you, and it won't take very long in a deck like ours where we're going wide and getting those counters spread out, where we won't just be able to knock players out. Beastmaster Ascension can help us get there. When it's out, whenever a creature we control attacks, we put a quest counter on it, and then as long as it has 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures we control get +5/+5. So another way to make those 1/1s big, make them very difficult to deal with. Intangible Virtue, giving our whole board +1/+1 in Vigilance is a great effect, meaning that we can attack and block freely without having been too worried about leaving ourselves wide open. Garruk's Uprising, giving the whole board trample, is really important. We're not going to take advantage of its top and bottom ability as much, because unless we're playing Garruk's Uprising late, I doubt we're going to... we're almost always going to have a creature with power 4 or greater later in the game when Garruk's Uprising comes in, but if we bring it in really early, I doubt it's going to be the case. So we're not going to get that bottom ability too much. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater comes in, draw a card. There's only 3 or 4 creatures in the deck that are really going to come in with power 4 or greater, being those Star Stores or things like Burke. But I think the important part is that trample. So that way, as we're growing with the counters, that trample is becoming more and more of a threat. Inspiring Leader. So if we have it and Finneas out, all of our tokens are getting +2/+2 again. Harder to deal with, harder to block. And then Reconnaissance got that great reprint in Assassin's Creed, making it a little bit cheaper. Reconnaissance is a completely broken damage, and you can see it in the Oracle text. We can pay 0, remove target attacking creature we control from combat, and untap it. And as you can see in parentheses, it says, if you activate during end of combat, because there is a step between damage is dealt and the end of combat, the creature will untap after it deals its combat damage. This is a crazy card for a lot of reasons. One, it gives your creatures vigilance, but it can protect a creature if it gets blocked in a way you don't want it to. Number 2, you can still deal your damage and untap. If we were playing a deck that had more tapping, to do, like if we were playing more of the Cryptolith Rite abilities to tap our creatures for mana, this means we could attack and tap them in the same turn. But really, Reconnaissance is here to attack, protect them if need be if they get blocked, but otherwise just have vigilance on our entire board to deal damage. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at it. I think the deck has really good legs. I think it feels really good. But there's a couple ways we can make it better. The first, and it's a card that if you've watched the channel for any amount of time, I generally don't put in decks because I know that it's a very mixed opinion on it, is Cathar's Crusade. Cathar's Crusade in this deck would be very, very good, and it will get out of hand very quickly. But some people generally tend to have a disinterest in players wanting to keep track of it. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you put a counter on each other creature you control, but it will help ending a game very quickly. Basri seems like one that could be good here. Putting a counter on a creature and making it indestructible would be great for Finneas, since we know it needs to attack every turn. The -2 says whenever one or more non-token creatures attack, create that many 1/1 soldier creature tokens tapped and attacking. Again, great to kind of grow our board. And then the -6, if we can get up to the emblem, says at the beginning of your combat on your turn, make a 1/1 soldier, then put a counter on each creature you control. I think Basri does everything the deck wants it to do. I just couldn't find a slot for it, and I think it'd be one of those cards I'd be pretty quickly bringing back in just to protect Finneas, because it needs to attack in order for us to get its ability. And then Grand Crescendo, we're already playing 3 or 4 white protection spells for our board in the deck. Believe me, we have plenty of them. Grand Crescendo is just a fun one because you can make tokens on top of protecting your board, and that could be important, right? Going wider and using the tokens to our advantage. But let's get into our play tests. Let's have some fun. Our first one here, we're keeping a 4-lander with Pollen Shield Hair, Temp with Bunnies, and Soul Ring. So always good to see a Soul Ring for mana, but Pollen Shield Hair is from Wilds of Eldraine. The adventure side can give a creature +X/+X in Vigilance, where X is the number of creatures you control. And then the main side just buffs all of our tokens. So turn 1, we draw a Valley Quest Caller. That's the one that gives all of our rabbits a buff, and then gives us the scry when a rabbit comes in. Turn 1, I think we could do something like Brushland into Soul Ring. I'm trying to see if there's a world where I can get Finneas and something else down turn 2. But I think with this being double colorless, we may have a tough time. Yeah, we would need one of them to be another color to be able to put out like Pollen Shield Hair and Finneas, but we could do the hair and Quest Color if we wanted to. We can kind of see what turn 2 brings for us. Turn 2 brings a Hop to it. Okay, well, that's always an option for a later turn. I mean, I really want to get Finneas out turn 2 because I want it to attack on turn 3, right, and get the process started. So I think I need to commit to bringing Finneas out here, which means we're kind of going to awkwardly have to bring other things down next turn, but that's okay. I really want to make sure Finneas gets the process started. So on turn 3, we're going to play that Plains 5 mana. I'm trying to think of what leads us to having the most. I would think the Quest Caller, right? Just that way we get the buff to Finneas. Now Finneas is a 3/3. And then the next option is either Hop to it or Temp with Bunnies. So for the purposes of this playtest, I'm going to cast Temp with the Bunnies, and I'm going to assume that everyone wants the bunnies. Now, there's probably a world where they don't, but let's say they do. Let's say everybody wants to take the rabbit, and I'm going to draw 4 and make 4 rabbits. The 1 from me and the 3 from everybody else. Again, we can argue all day, every day, whether my opponents would do it, but let's say they do. I get a counter, right, when I go to combat and attack with Finneas. I actually would get to... I just realized I would get a couple scries in there before I draw those cards, so we'll just do them now. We'll just scry 4, now, since it'd be probably after the spell finishes resolving, right? Caretaker's Talent I really like, so I'm just going to keep it on top for all versions of our sky. Sure, we're going to have to pitch a card here, but I don't necessarily mind that. I think we're good to pitch something like maybe Lupin Flower Village for now. But Finneas spread all the counters around, took an attack as a 3/3, which I don't think is a problem by any means. On turn 3, I'm more than sure we'll have somebody, even since we know everybody has the 1/1 bunnies that they got. I have a tough time believing Finneas doesn't have a safe attack here on turn 3 that we can't hit into somebody with. And now we've just grown the board for us. Turn 4, my land options are 3 Tree City, that new land from Bloomborough, where it either taps for a colorless, or when it comes in, we have to choose a creature type. And we can pay 2 and tap and add a mana of any color equal to the number of creatures of the chosen type we have. The board feels really good, right? With us having 6 rabbits and potentially being able to add a couple more. I mean, there's a world where we tap 3 for Hop to it, make 3 more rabbits, and then tap this 3-tree city with Soul Ring for 4, 7, 9 mana of any one color. I could see, like, Caretaker's Talent into Virtual Loyalty. I could see Mirror Entity into Virtual Loyalty. I could see Pollen Shield Hair into a Virtual Loyalty. We could use that 9 mana to our advantage. So let's do it. Let's hop to it. Making 3 more rabbits. That's going to get us 3 individual Scry 1s. I think we're good on the Rampant Growth. And War Leader I really like, so we're going to keep that one on top. And then pay the Soul Ring into the 3-tree city for 7 mana. Again, I think I'm 9 mana. I think I'm okay with it being white. I'll miss out on the Salvager, which is what it is, but I think I would pay 5 for the Virtual Loyalty and 2 for Pollen Shield Hair. That will give me another Scry, and we want to keep that War Leader right on top. Now all my creatures are getting a +1/+1 buff, so we could have a pretty good attack right here, especially when we get to end of turn, right? And they get that +1/+1 counter. So they're both, all of our rabbits, other rabbits except Quest Caller are getting, or all these tokens are getting +2/+2, right, from these two here. So that means these are 4/4s, these are 3/3s, and they're going to grow when Finneas goes to combat and attacks. And I believe here on turn 4, we'll have somewhere to point Finneas as a 3/3 with absolutely no problem. I doubt we wouldn't. These are all going to get a counter. Pollen Shield Hair and the Quest Caller are both going to get a counter. And I have a feeling we could point these at somebody. I mean, 4, 8, 12, 16, 19, 22, 25 damage in just tokens. And then at end step, we're going to untap all of our creatures and put another counter. And the cool part is now these counters are going to go on Finneas, so Finneas can start growing. Pass to our opponents. And as we're coming back on turn 5, we now have a board full of rabbits that are just going to keep getting bigger, once during combat and then once during the loyalty. The cool part here about War Leader is War Leader doesn't have to attack, right, for its ability to go off, which means I would just go ahead right into the 3-tree city again for 9 mana, and I would just go ahead and offspring the War Leader. I'm going to get 2 separate Scries. Second Harvest is perfect. We'll keep it on top. So now whenever I attack, I can choose one, get another rabbit that's having attacking, or get the buff. And I think I want the buff for both of them. And we have a potential chance to knock at least one person out this turn. There's no way for me to get the Salvager down and use its ability. But we've got a pretty wide board state. I guess I probably could have done Caretaker's Talent before the War Leader, right? So let's just do that, and then that, which would have gotten me the second harvest, right? And I mean, that's another potential way to just win the game, but I'll keep it up, right? I don't think I have any reason to use it. Well, I can't cast it on the Double Grain, but I would go to combat, swing, either split all of these or swing them all at the same person. I mean, on turn 5, I have an opportunity to knock, I would imagine, at least one player out with 4/4s, these 3/3s that are now going to get even bigger. Think about it, because they're getting +2/+2 here. They're getting +4/+4 overall from these 4 once we attack, meaning this 4/4 is an 8/8. So you have 8, 16, 24, 32, and then another 21. So we should be able to knock at least one player out. Again, go to combat, attack. We do the War Leader triggers, giving each of them, I would say, +2/+2, and then put a counter from Finneas. And again, we knock at least one player out here. At the end step, they all get another counter. And I mean, it just comes down to what do our opponents have, to disrupt our board at this point. If they don't have anything, the Rabbit Swarm just knocks them out next turn. But let's go into playtest number 2. I know that's it's odd playtesting sometimes because you kind of have to play around, what if my opponent has X, what if my opponent has Y. But I think we're trying to, when you playtest, you're trying to see where your deck could go so that you understand functionally what your line looks like and how you maneuver around it. Freelander here with 2 plains and a forest getting up into that Garruk's Uprising, so I love it. We have an Intrepid Rabbit, we have a Warren Elder, and we have Jack Rabbit. I like it. We have a good mix of rabbits, good mix of ways to get towards some fun. So we'll just get that plains down turn 1. Turn 2, get the forest down. Same thing, get Finneas down. We want to get Finneas down so we can get Finneas starting attacking right next turn. Turn 3, we'll get that 3rd land down. We can get the rabbit down, but I'd rather get an extra one if I can. I think what makes the most sense would be, I guess, jacked rabbit for one. Have it come in with one counter. I mean, it kind of stinks, right? Because the ravenous draw would be good. But here the thing is, this turn Finneas attacks again. I firmly believe we have a safe attack right now on turn 3 as a 2/2. That would put another counter on Jackrabbits. Now Jackrabbit next turn is going to make 3 rabbits when it attacks, and we're off to the races on a good start this time. We draw Clever Concealment, a protection spell that is very, very good. I've got 2 lines here. I can go Garrick's Uprising to get the trample started. Unfortunately, when it comes in, I'm not going to have a creature power 4 or greater, so I could do it after combat. Jackrabbit doesn't need to hit in order to make the tokens. It just needs to make the tokens. So, I mean, I could play Garrick's Uprising after combat to draw a card, or I could get the Intrepid Rabbits in. The Intrepid Rabbits would lead to more rabbit tokens, right? Because I could use both of their +1/+1s on Jacked Rabbit to make it it's a 3/4 right now. The two Intrepid Rabbits would make it a 5/6, and then Finneas would make it a 6/7 on attack, so I could make 6 1/1s. Or I could focus on drawing that card. I mean, I think that's my option, right? Get the Intrepid Rabbit down, give the Jacked Rabbits the buff, and then move to combat. On turn 4, I still firmly believe that Finneas has a safe attack. If Finneas doesn't, take one of the +1/+1s from the rabbit and put it on Finneas, so it's a 3/3, and I firmly believe a 3/3 would be safe. But let's say it's a world where we didn't have to. Jackrabbit is a 3/4. The two here makes it a 5/6, and then Finneas attacking makes it a 6/7, making a 6/1/1 rabbits. Now here comes the question, right? Should I do it last? Should I do Jackrabbit first to get 5 rabbit tokens, or 6 rabbit tokens? Or, yeah, should I do it first to get 5 rabbit tokens but get the counters from Finneas? Or should I do it last to get the extra rabbit token? And my gut tells me I should do it first. So only making 5 tokens here just to get these going. Because I feel like now with something like Garrick's Uprising, we're going to start threatening, with these tokens. So maybe that's what I would do, making 5 instead of the 6 when that counter goes on. But hey, that's okay. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we need to think about what's the best line for future turns. Because now, turn 5 here, we untap with 5 mana. Garrick's Uprising coming in will draw us a card, because that Jacked Rabbit is above 4 power. We've got 2 mana left. I think I like the Warren Elder, just because it's another rabbit to use to protect ourselves. It is another white creature we could potentially tap for Clever Concealment. Because I feel like because here's my philosophy. If someone was going to wipe this board, they would have done it during our opponent's turns, and we could have tapped these rabbits to Clever Concealment. Jackrabbit, the cool part now, is just going to make some more. So I'll get the Warren Elder down, move to combat. I'm going to swing with this, probably with this entire brick of rabbits. I don't really see any reason not to. On attack, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to have Jackrabbit go off first, making me 1, 2, 3, 4 rabbits, and then I'm going to put the counter on all of them. Again, just to get the most... sorry, I would have drawn last turn because of Finneas. Completely forgot that. So we'll... it's not a May, so we'll just do that to catch up. Now Jackrabbit's getting with Trample. All these are getting in with Trample. We just created 4 that are not tapped, so we have the Clever Concealment protection in tow. If somebody tries to wipe the board, we just phase everything out, and now next turn our opponents are in a ton of trouble. We have a lot of these 1/1s that are going to get even bigger. All we need is one sort of buff like this Inspiring Leader, right? Now that's +2/+2 extra. I mean, we're going to threaten to take at least one person out here on turn 6, if not more. So we draw for turn 6 mana here. I would go Inspiring Leader. This gives all of our tokens +2/+2 as long as Finneas is out. So now these guys basically are all effectively base power and toughness 3/3. I mean, the Beauregard Mentor would be nice, right? To put down as an option, right? Make it big. And again, move to combat. I would probably put all these at one person, all these at somebody else, because I have a feeling we're gonna knock somebody out with this string of rabbits. But I think we can honestly knock 2 players out here on turn 6 with this board. Everybody gets a counter. Again, do the jackrabbit first, so that's 5 tokens for the rabbits for the jackrabbit. Put a counter on everything, and then draw a card with Finneas, and cool, that means we can play that main too. But again, I think we knock at least one person out here. Garrick's Uprising, remember, giving them all trample. So this Mentor, I apologize, actually would have drawn us a card off the Garrick's Uprising when it came in, with it being massive. And now we hold up the Clever Concealment. I mean, I think we just win the game outright on our next turn on turn 7. It's crazy to me to see, yes, we had a playtest or two where we got really good draws, and you look and see how good something like Jackrabbit is here. But it just goes to show you how that Finneas attacking every turn, how much it can really just drive value. Yes, Finneas is only a 2/2 here. It's not a big creature, but there is a world where, we attack with the Finneas and use other things to buff it up or try to find other ways to get counters on it. You know what I mean? There's a way to protect Finneas in the deck other than what we saw here, but I think this deck has some really fun potential to get rabbits down, go wide, and really punish and hurt your opponents. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Finneas down in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys next.